By the time the probation officer yanked her out of my hydrangeas, she had already tried to repossess my front porch, like she was auditioning for the world's angriest HOA reboot. This cabin was supposed to be condemned, barked Lorraine Maddox, former HOA president, current ex-felon, and undefeated champion of questionable life choices. Her state-issued ankle monitor beeped wildly, like it couldn't decide whether to warn her or give up entirely. Apparently, it wasn't programmed for situations where the woman who once fined me for aggressive grass growth comes charging at the guy who testified against her in court. I just sipped my coffee on the porch steps, watching her thrash in the bushes while the new HOA board, half the sheriff's department, and 3 bewildered neighbors stared like they'd stumbled into a deleted scene from a suburban thriller. She twisted around, leaves stuck in her hair, eyes burning at me. "You were supposed to disappear, Mark," she hissed. I tipped my mug. "Funny thing, property deeds don't vanish just because you go to prison. My name is Mark, and I live in a cedar cabin the HOA keeps insisting is a rustic single-family compliance opportunity, which is HOA speak, for they don't like anything that isn't beige, overpriced, or approved by a committee with matching clipboards. My place sits at the far edge of Birchwood Hollow, half hidden behind pines, with a creek that sounds nicer than most spa recordings. It's the only corner of the neighborhood where you can't hear lawnmowers humming or see artificial turf pretending to be grass. Naturally, that meant it offended Lorraine Maddox on a spiritual level. Back when she was president of the HOA, Lorraine had the posture of someone prepared to file a complaint at any moment. She wore her hair in a tight twist that looked legally binding. The first day I moved in, she arrived with a welcome packet, the thickness of a medical textbook and a tape measure she flicked open with military crispness. "We don't usually allow structures like this," she said, eyeing my porch as though it were contagious. "But since it's grandfathered, we will need to discuss your compliance pathway." "It's a cabin," I said. "The pathway is wood, trees, air." Her smile suggested she was already filing my name under problem. Within 3 months, she declared a full-scale campaign. First came the gentle but condescending notices. "Your firewood is stacked at a non-regulation angle. Your porch light is 300K to cool. Unapproved wildlife activity noted." That last one was about a raccoon. His name was Milo. Milo didn't care about the HOA, and the HOA definitely didn't care for Milo. Then Lorraine escalated. She began taking photos from the tree line at night, sometimes with a flash, which defeated the whole purpose of spying. She paced the distance between my cabin and the creek like she was planning a military strike. She began calling my home the shack in official emails. At one point, she tried to reclassify my cabin as a non-compliant accessory structure, demanding I repaint it to HOA beige and modernize it. She even photoshopped a mock-up of my cabin turned into an oatmeal-colored sad box. I hung the mock-up on my fridge. Milo knocked it off twice. When I showed her the county records proving the cabin was a primary residence, she didn't retreat. She reloaded. Suddenly, I was receiving violation letters at the rate of subscription spam, daily fines, mandatory reviews, architectural threats. Loren's emails read like she was trying to evict nature itself. When none of it scared me, she got inventive. She filed a complaint claiming my electrical wiring was a critical fire hazard. The county inspector walked in, took one look, and said, "This is the safest house in this zip code." Lorraine simmered as he signed the approval form with dramatic flourish. But instead of stopping her, the failed inspection gave Lorraine a fresh, psychotic creativity. One windy February night, the power at only my cabin went out. When I stepped outside, the pines moaned like stressed telephone lines. I checked the breaker box and saw the lock had been cut clean through. The panel hung open, wires yanked in a way that practically screamed not a weather problem. Then I spotted something else mounted on a tree. Pointed directly at my cabin was a cheap little security camera, the kind sold to people who think raccoons are government spies. The next morning, a deputy showed up. "Someone reported you bypassed the meter and were stealing power," he said. I almost choked laughing until I saw the complaint form. Filed by Maddox Lorraine. I walked him to the breaker box, pointing at the hacked wires. "Yeah," he said slowly. "This wasn't you. This is vandalism." He made a file, took pictures, and asked if I had cameras. "Not yet," I said. "Give me today." By dusk, I had 3. One on the cabin, one near the road, one hidden in the pines. And unlike Lorraine's late-night infomercial camera, mine actually worked. 3 weeks later, the sheriff came again, this time with a warrant. Lorraine had accused me of operating a clandestine substance facility. In plain English, a meth lab. In the woods, with squirrels as accomplices. Apparently, I didn't argue. I simply handed him a flash drive. The footage showed Lorraine cutting the breaker lock, Lorraine planting a suspicious bag under my woodpile, Lorraine making a call while parked outside my cabin at midnight. The deputy's jaw tightened like he was trying not to swear. "Yeah," he finally said. "That's evidence tampering and false reporting." 2 months later, Lorraine Maddox was convicted on multiple counts. Filing false reports, tampering with evidence, vandalism, harassment. The judge didn't even pretend to be impressed by her HOA status. She received 3 years in prison. Everyone assumed I'd sell the cabin by the time she got out. Everyone except me. 3 years later, Birchwood Hollow had changed. The new HOA board was calmer, focused mostly on pool maintenance and pretending they didn't know Lorraine personally. They sent friendly reminders instead of threats. Occasionally someone would say, "Man, you got the best spot in the neighborhood." I added more cameras, a metal roof, and a new rocking chair that creaked just enough to bother people who hated silence. Then Marcus, the new HOA president, sent an email. Former HOA president Lorraine Maddox has been released on parole. Please report suspicious activity. 2 days later, I heard a familiar sound, a wheezing beige SUV crawling up the street. Lorraine climbed out thinner, sharper, hair cropped short, ankle monitor blinking like a dollar store Christmas light. She saw the cabin. She froze. She realized she had built a fantasy in which she had won. Instead, she saw a fresh-stained exterior, new solar panels, my truck parked proudly, and me sipping coffee like the ghost of her worst mistake. Her face cycled through grief, rage, denial, and something like indigestion. "What are you doing here?" she demanded. "Living in my house," I said. "What about you?" "Violating parole within the first 6 minutes," she sputtered, pointing at the cabin like it offended physics. "This structure was supposed to be removed. Lorraine, you were convicted for messing with it." And then she stepped closer. Mistake number 1. "Mark, this neighborhood is mine." My phone was already recording, my other hand was already dialing. "Hey, Officer Ramirez," I said when the parole officer answered. "Yeah, it's Mark. You will never guess who just crossed the property line." 10 minutes later, the scene looked like a suburban episode of Law & Order, HOA edition. Officer Ramirez pulled up in his cruiser, 2 backup patrol cars followed, and the entire new HOA board arrived, looking confused but curious. 3 neighbors, lawn chairs in tow, claimed prime observation points. Birchwood Hollow doesn't get cable, we make do with live drama. Lorraine Maddox, former HOA tyrant, stood on the front walk, gesturing wildly, shouting about unfinished enforcement actions and non-compliant structures. Her ankle monitor beeped erratically, as if echoing her panic. "You do not understand," she shouted, voice escalating. "He has been sabotaging the neighborhood. His testimony is biased. He's always hostile to the Officer Ramirez stepped forward calmly. "Miss Maddox, your parole terms prohibit contact with Mr. Greene, his property, or the HOA in any official capacity. Did you read those terms?" She scoffed. "Those terms are lies. That cabin shouldn't even exist. The board approved a remediation plan." Marcus, the new HOA president, cleared his throat, holding up a heavy binder. "A small clarification. We actually voted to designate the cabin as a historic rustic feature last year. It's officially written in the revised covenants, page 4. Birchwood Hollow covenants, updated without the crazy." The neighbors chuckled. Lorraine did not. "There's no way you legitimized that shack," she hissed. Marcus smiled. "It increased everyone's property value. Realtors call it character." I tried to hide a grin. Then Ramirez looked at me. "Mr. Greene, you said you had video." I nodded and pulled out my phone. The footage showed Lorraine marching up my driveway, ignoring clearly marked no trespassing and restraining order signs, voice raised, threatening to finish her campaign. She lunged toward the phone. Mistake number 3. Ramirez reacted instantly. One moment she was ranting about community standards. The next, she was face down in the shrubs, hands cuffed, ankle monitor shrieking like a smoke alarm. "You cannot do this," she screamed. "I am the president." "The president of what?" Marcus said dryly. "The Department of Bad Life Choices." The neighbors laughed. No one rushed to help her. Ramirez read her new charges: violation of a restraining order, parole violation, harassment, and given your prior conviction related to this same victim. I would say the judge is not going to be amused. They hauled her up. Her eyes found mine, wild and disbelieving. "You were supposed to be gone," she whispered. "Nah," I said. "I pay my mortgage. You dodge your consequences. Different lifestyles." They loaded her into the back of the cruiser. Her ankle monitor flashed in the rear window like a dying firefly. The neighbors clapped quietly, some chuckling. Birchwood Hollow's little rebellion had triumphed without a single gunshot fired. Only HOA bureaucracy and a well-timed phone call. 2 weeks later, Marcus sent out another email. Update. The court had revoked Lorraine Maddox's parole and imposed an additional 5-year sentence. More importantly, the ruling permanently prohibited her from serving on or advising any HOA condo board or similar governing body. For life, they essentially banned her from her favorite obsession. The court order even included a line, specifically stating, "Defendant shall have no role, formal or informal, in governance of any residential association." Lorraine Maddox sat in the courtroom, her face frozen in complete disbelief as the judge read the sentence. 5 more years, lifetime ban from ever touching an HOA again. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish, gasping for air, yet no sound emerged. The woman who had spent years pacing, measuring chimneys, photoshopping my cabin into beige boxes, and inventing imaginary rules was finally confronted with the punishment worse than prison itself: permanent exile from the one thing she truly loved. Meanwhile, back at my cabin, the sunlight filtered through pine branches, and Milo, my raccoon, inspected the perimeter like a security consultant. I stepped onto the porch, coffee in hand, savoring the quiet. No letters, no warnings, no uninvited cameras. Just peace and the satisfaction of watching justice arrive without the melodrama of court. TV editing. Birchwood Hollow slowly returned to its understated rhythm. The neighbors whispered to one another about how the shack had survived, how Mark had outmaneuvered the former HOA queen. Lorraine Maddox's legend became part cautionary tale, part suburban folklore. Her power, once feared, had dissolved into a series of unfortunate legal papers and a blinking ankle monitor. I leaned back in the rocking chair that creaked just enough to remind anyone looking from the road that this was my space, my home, my victory. Nature hummed around me, and for the first time in years, the cabin was just a cabin, safe, untouched, approved by no one but common sense. Even now, whenever I see someone on the street glance curiously at the cabin, I smile quietly. They don't know the story of the war waged and lost by Lorraine Maddox. They don't know the surveillance cameras, the false reports, or the ankle monitor drama. All they see is a cedar cabin, standing stubbornly in its rightful place, surrounded by trees, creek, and the quiet authority of a homeowner who refused to back down. Justice, I realized, was sometimes quiet, sometimes subtle. Sometimes it beeped and flashed from the rear of a cruiser and never came again. And somewhere deep down, I knew that Lorraine Maddox, wherever she was serving her new sentence, would remember every moment of that defeat just as vividly as I remembered every insult, threat, and misstep she ever made. In Birchwood Hollow, some houses are just structures, others are monuments, and mine had survived a queen's obsession, a legal battle, and 3 years of scheming, to become exactly what it was always meant to be, untouchable. The gavel came down and Lorraine Maddox, former queen of Birchwood Hollow, slumped, defeated in her chair.